What's up, you freaking geniuses? All right, so in this video, I'm going to teach you how to add and subtract mixed numbers with different denominators, or unlike denominators, okay? Same thing, just two different ways of saying it. And in the previous video, I did the same thing, but I used fractions with the same denominators, right? So if you need to check that out, I'll link it up in the card above. But if you don't, we're just going to move on and get into these examples, okay? So I'm just going to reintroduce one thing that I did in the last video that will be helpful. So again, what are the two things that make up a mixed fraction or a mixed number? There's two things, right? So the first is it's an integer, and the other thing is a proper fraction, okay? Proper fraction. And in case you don't remember what an integer is just a whole number, but it can be positive or negative, okay? So like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Or -1, -2, -3, -4, right, etc. Okay, so let's get into this first example. Okay, so what if I gave you 4 2/3 minus 2 1/5? Okay, so if you remember from the last video, we have to group the whole numbers or the integers together, and we have to group the fractions together, right? Okay, so we're going to put the integers on one side, integers over here, and we're going to put the fractions over here. Okay, so let's do the integers. So what do we have? We have 4 minus 2, right? 4 minus 2. What is that? That's just 2. Okay, now we're going to do 2/3 minus 1/5. 2/3 minus 1/5. What is that equal to? Well, remember, whenever we add or subtract fractions, we need to have the same denominator. So do we have the same denominator here? No, of course not. So how can we evaluate this so we do have the same denominator? Okay, well, if you remember, we have to cross the denominators. So what do I mean by that? So this 3, we're going to cross it to that side, okay? And we're going to multiply by 3 on the top and the bottom. And we're going to do the same thing with the 5, okay? We're going to cross it to that side, okay? So we're going to multiply by 5 here, multiply by 5 here. Okay, so what's 5 times 2? That's 10. And that's going to be over 5 times 3, which is 15. And then remember, we're subtracting, so we're going to have a minus sign right there. Then we have 1 times 3, which is 3. And we have 5 times 3, which is 15. So as you can see, now we have the same denominator, right? So now this is a lot easier to solve. So we're going to have a 15 in the denominator for our answer. And then we're just going to do 10 minus 3. So what's 10 minus 3? That's just 7. So 2/3 minus 1/5 is equal to 7 over 15. Okay, and now again, what are the two things that make up a mixed number? It's an integer and a proper fraction, right? Do we have an integer here? Yes. Do we have a proper fraction here? Yes. Okay, so now we can just combine these two into a mixed number. How do we do that? We just add them together. So we have 2 plus 7/15. Now, I could turn this 2 into a fraction, and we could have a fraction plus a fraction. But if we just want to keep it as a mixed number, which most likely on your homework or your test you're going to want to, okay, then this is just going to equal 2 7/15. You kind of just sandwich them together. Okay, and there's your answer. So 4 2/3 minus 2 1/5 is equal to 2 7/15. Okay, so that's how you do that. And then one more thing to point out about the answer. Since this number is positive and this number is positive, we're able to just squish them together, okay? That's why I just squished them together like that. But if we had -2 plus 7/15 or 2 plus -7/15, okay? In these cases, we can't do that. We can't just squish it together because you can see this one's negative and this one's positive, right? And then in this case, this one's positive and this one's negative. So in both of these cases, we would have to turn this 2, we'd have to turn it into a fraction, okay? Because we can't just squish it together like we did here. Because if you remember in the last video, a quick little trick I taught you was, okay, so if we have 2 plus 7/15, okay, this is positive, so our answer is going to be positive also, right? And we can just squish it together. And we can do the same thing if it's negative, okay? So if this is -2 minus 7/15, okay, well then we can just make it negative and squish it together, okay? But if we have one that's negative and one that's positive, or one that's positive and one that's negative, well, then we're going to have to evaluate this properly. And by that, I just mean we have to do a fraction plus a fraction, okay? So I just wanted to point that out because we're going to do a couple examples where all of this stuff kind of comes into play. So that way, going into it, it's going to make a little more sense, okay? So don't worry, I'm going to clarify. Okay, so let's do another example. So what if I gave you 4 1/5 minus 2 2/3? Okay, so remember, the integers, or the whole numbers, they go on this side, and the fractions, we're going to put them on this side. Okay, so we're going to do 4 minus 2. Okay, so 4 minus 2, and that's equal to 2. And then this time we're going to do 1/5 minus 2/3. 1/5 minus 2/3. Okay, what is that equal to? Well, again, we have to cross the fractions, right? We have to do that again. Okay, so the 5, we're going to do times 5 times 5. This 3, we're going to do times 3 times 3. Okay, so let's simplify this. What's 3 times 1? That's 3. 3 times 5 is 15. Minus, right? We're subtracting, so we're minus. And then 2 times 5, that's 10. 3 times 5 is 15. Okay, so again, we have a 15 on the bottom, so we can just keep it. Now we're going to do 3 minus 10. So what's 3 minus 10? That's negative 7. Okay, in the last problem, it was positive 7/15. This time we have negative 7/15. So I'm going to just rewrite it over here. Now, what are the two things that we need? We need an integer and a proper fraction, right? So is this an integer? Yes. Okay, and is this a proper fraction? Yes. Why? Because 7 is less than 15, right? The top number is smaller than the bottom number. And I know we technically have negative 7 in the numerator, but you can actually just kind of ignore the negative sign right now. All you really have to compare are the whole numbers, okay? So just kind of ignore that right now, okay? Is 7 smaller than 15? Yes. Okay, so we have an improper fraction. Okay, so now let's combine these, right? Just like last time. How do we combine them? Well, we just add them together, okay? So we're going to have 2 plus negative 7/15. So just like I was explaining in the last example, we have a negative here, but we have a positive 2 here, okay? So we can't just squish them together. We actually have to turn this 2 into a fraction. How do we do that? Well, the easiest way is simply putting it over 1, okay? Because if we put 2 over 1, this is the same thing as saying 2 divided by 1. And what is 2 divided by 1? Well, it's just 2, right? So we're not changing the value. But it's just two different ways of writing it. I could write it just as 2, or I could write it as 2 over 1. Okay, and here's another thing. What do you remember about adding negative numbers? What do you do when you add a negative number? Well, you can just get rid of that plus sign. So we're just going to be left with 2 minus 7/15, okay? So I'm going to put the minus 7/15 right there. Okay, so now we have 2 over 1 minus 7/15, right? But as you can see, we have different denominators, right? We have a 1 over here and a 15 over here. So what am I going to do? I'm just going to cross them. So this 1, I'm going to do times 1 times 1. And then this 15, I'm going to do times 15 and times 15, okay? So now let's evaluate this bad boy. All right, so what's 15 times 2? Okay, that's going to be 30. What's 15 times 1? That's 15, okay? And then we're subtracting, right? We have a minus here. So what's 7 times 1? That's 7. And what's 15 times 1? That's 15. Cool! Finally, thank goodness, we have the same denominator. Okay, so now this is easy, right? So we're just going to have a 15 in the bottom, in the denominator, and then 30 minus 7, that's positive 23. Boom! Here's our answer. So 2 plus negative 7/15 is equal to 23 over 15. But this is an improper fraction, right? Because the top number is bigger than the bottom number. But the main thing is we want it as a mixed fraction or a mixed number. So how can we convert this improper fraction to a mixed number? Well, that's not too bad, right? All we have to do is divide. So all we're going to do is divide, right? So 23 divided by 15. Or another way of writing this is just 23 divided by 15, right? Okay, so 15, it doesn't go into 2, but it does go into 23 once. 1 times 15 is 15. 23 minus 15 is 8. Okay, and if you remember how to reorganize this top number, that's going to be your whole number, okay? This remainder, that goes on top, okay? And then whatever number we had in the denominator originally is going to go in the denominator here as well. Okay, so our answer is 1 8/15. Okay, so our original problem was up here, right? 4 1/5 minus 2 2/3. What did that equal? 1 8/15. Okay, so I threw a lot at you in this example, all right? So I just want to quickly recap what I did. So this was our original problem. We split it into integers and fractions, right? We got our integer, we cross-multiplied with the fractions, right? And we got a proper fraction here, okay? So at this point, all we had to do was add them together. So that's what we did, right? We did 2 plus negative 7/15. That's what we did. But again, what was the rule? If you have a positive and a negative, you can't just squish them together, okay? You actually have to turn this whole number into a fraction. So how did we do that? We just put it over 1, right? And then from this point on, I think it was pretty straightforward what we did, right? All we were doing was subtracting two fractions that had different denominators. So on here we had 1, here we had 15, so we just crossed them, okay? And then we got the same denominators, we evaluated, and we got an improper fraction. And then the very last step was just converting this into a mixed number, right? Because our original problem was with mixed numbers, so we wanted our answer as a mixed number, right? How do you do that? You just divide, okay? That's all it is. And then you just sort this like normal, and then this gives you your final answer. So I know that was a lot, so just watch it a couple times if you have to, and then I think the steps are gonna make a lot more sense, okay? But I'm gonna do one more example, and then I think it's gonna tie it all in together a little bit for you. Okay, so what if we had negative 4 2/3 plus 2 1/5? Okay, so we're gonna do the same thing we've been doing with all the other ones, right? We're gonna split these into integers on this side, fractions on this side, okay? So what integers do we have here? We have negative 4 plus 2, right? So negative 4 plus 2. What does that equal to? Negative 2. Then we have the fractions. 2/3 plus 1/5. 2/3 plus 1/5, okay? Different denominators, so what do? We just cross them, right? So this 3, we have times 3 times 3. This 5, we have times 5 times 5. Okay, so let's evaluate this. 5 times 2 is 10 over 5 times 3 is 15. Remember, this time we're adding, okay, so we have a plus right there. Then 1 times 3 is 3. 5 times 3 is 15. What is this equal to? Well, we have 15, so we're going to keep it, right? 15. 10 plus 3 is 13. 13 over 15, okay? So I'm just going to rewrite that right here so we keep track of it, 13 over 15. Now, what are the two things we're looking for? We're looking for an integer and a proper fraction. Is this an integer? Yes, because remember, integers can be positive or negative, right? So this is an integer. Is this a proper fraction? Yes. So now what are we going to do? We're just going to combine them. How do we combine them? By adding. Okay, so we're going to have negative 2 plus 13 over 15. Okay, can I just squish these together? No, right? Because this one's negative and this one's positive, okay? So this whole number, I need to turn it into a fraction. And again, how do I do that? Well, I can just put it over 1. So I'm going to put negative 2 over 1. Now again, we're adding, right? So we're going to put a plus 13/15. Right, so at this point, I think it's pretty straightforward. It's just the exact same thing we did right here, right? Different denominators. So again, we have different denominators. So this 15, I'm going to bring it over here. So I got Whoops, I got 15 times negative 2, and then 15 times 1, and then this 1, I'm just going to do times 1 times 1. Okay, so what is 15 times negative 2? That's negative 30. That's going to go over 15 times 1, which is 15. We're adding, so we got a plus. So now we have 13 times 1, which is 13, and 15 times 1, which is 15. Again, same denominators, okay? So we keep it, 15. Now what's the top? We have negative 30 plus 13, right? And what's that equal to? Well, that's negative 17. Now, as you can see, we have an improper fraction right here, right? And again, ignore the negative if you have to. Which number is bigger, the top or the bottom? The top, right? So this is an improper fraction. Okay, so how do we turn improper fractions to mixed numbers? Well, we just divide, right? Okay, and again, when we have this negative sign here, the easiest thing to do is just kind of ignore it for right now. Okay, so we're just going to do 17 divided by 15, right? Or another way of writing that is 17 divided by 15. Okay, so 15 goes into 17 once. 1 times 15 is 15. 17 minus 15 is 2. Again, this top number becomes your whole number or your integer. This remainder goes at the top. And then whatever number we had here at the bottom is what we're going to keep down here also. Okay, but remember, our improper fraction was negative, right? So we're just going to keep this as negative. Okay, so if you have a negative improper fraction here that you're converting, your mixed number is also going to be negative, okay? Because if I had a positive 7 over 15, well, okay, then this would be positive 1 2/15, okay? But since this one was negative, then we're going to make this negative also. Okay, guys, so that's how you add and subtract positive and negative mixed fractions that have different denominators. I hope that was helpful. I hope that cleared some stuff up for you. If it did, definitely leave a thumbs up. And if it didn't, let me know how I could have made it better. Or if there's another problem or example you want to see, let me know what it is, and I can definitely help you out with it. I really appreciate all the feedback, okay? So if you want to take a minute to do that, I would greatly appreciate it. Okay, but other than that, now we're going to get into multiplying and dividing fractions, okay? Which in my opinion, like I already mentioned, is a lot easier than all of this. So if you need to check that out, definitely check it out, and I will see you there.